Okay, so I have a video today that the timing worked out where I had two of the same type of item arrive within a day of each other, so I thought it might be best just to combine them into a single video. So today I have, if you recognize these logos, you'll see this is the Amarillo Stationery, and then this is the Pen Addict logo. And what I have today are actually both of them. Now, the Pen Addict is already released. The Amarillo is coming soon, but the timing worked out where I was able to get one a little bit in advance when I happened to place an order, and Eric was kind enough to reach out and give me the opportunity to do an upgrade. So, get that open, and then get this open. Now, these are both nib holders, and they are made by, or were turned by River City Pen Company. And this material was made by Nick Pasquale of Pens by Pasquale. And I believe this one was made from Turnt Pen Co. And this is known as the ink thrower. And then I don't know if Eric has a specific name for his nib holder, but I really like the colors of this. I like all the Amarillo inks. So it made sense to get one of each. That being said, even though they are made by the same maker, this one, hold over here, is known as the contour model. You can see it's got a little bit of a larger bevel at the top, and it's got some kind of grip lines in it, and also just turns so you can see all the colors in that material. And then this, the one from Pen Addict, is known as the slim model. You can see it's more of a straight back with a taper to a point. And once again, beautiful material, the kind of fire reds and oranges with the black and grays mixed in. Very much a fan already of these two materials. Now, I also ordered from Amarillo to go with it. Got here. This is a Kakimori dip nib, which this is one of those things I had wanted for a while. So once again, the timing lined up perfectly to go along with this. Just to add in as I'm doing more ink swatches. And then alongside that, I also have a couple of other nibs here. That one is just a Yovo 6, and one is a kind of a dip calligraphy nib, just to show how all three of those will work on these nib holders. So let's get the stickers put aside here. So to start, if you're not familiar with nib holder, all this is it has, and let me get, you can see there, you can see there's this little kind of rubber insert with a circle on it. That's where you can take a nib and it will just kind of sit inside there. Hold it in, and now this nib can be dipped into a bottle of ink to do dip writing, and you'll notice there's not a feed on this, so it's just going to be the amount of ink that sticks to the metal. And it's kind of the premise, like this is a dip nib that I think came from an old art set that, I don't know how, this is probably predates me. I think this is something my mom had, probably a speedball nib of some sort that's been around from forever. It has writing on it, but it's kind of tarnished, so I can't even tell what it is. But it's the same premise, and I'll show on this one here. You just take it, and it slides in on that outer ring, and then you have it there to be able to dip in and write. And, you know, this would be going back to the old days where you'd have an inkwell and you'd dip in and write a few words, dip in, write a few words. And then for the Kakimori, you can see the bottom of it, it is perfectly round, and it's kind of, getting this lined up on the camera, kind of hollow in there. And that's what this circle comes into play. It just pops in to the circle, and now this is ready to dip and write. And I believe I mentioned, but this is the stainless steel Kakimori. Now, I'm going to put this Yovo 6 into one of the nib holders, the Kakimori in the other. And I have a couple of new inks that I need to swatch anyway, so I'm going to go in and do that and, you know, show how the Kakimori works. Now, this is my first time ever using it, so if I mess up, you're going to see it on the video, but I'm okay with that. So I got some paper here in my ink swatching plotter. This is a sheet of Irreful A5 that I've punched myself. And for the inks that I'm going to be swatching, I just picked these up. My wife and I picked them up from Gentleman Stationery last week. It's two of the Lamy Crystal Inks. It's the Amazonite and the ruby, I believe. So to get started, and I'm also going to swatch, just so I mentioned, on some of the colorverse card or color ring cards here that'll go in my Rolodex of ink swatches. So I'm going to do it on a couple things just to kind of show the variation. And since this is just going to be kind of a playing around sheet, I can test the inks before I actually do a swatch on the color ring cards. So we'll start out with the Amazonite here. So I'll start with the normal nib, and I'm going to get this little nib holder set here so I can set the pins on it, so to limit any more ink getting on my desk mat. And if you saw the previous video when I did the stationery stack tray, the timer ended after about a week, where in prepping for this video, I pulled what I thought was a clean nib out of the feed, and it was in fact one that needed to be cleaned. So I now have a little bit of black ink decoration on my desk mat, but that's okay. So this is just a Yovo number 6, and this happens to be a double broad, which, yes, that is odd for me if you've seen any of my videos. This is one when I was looking for a extra fine, Esterbrook sent me a double broad because I told them I was going to be able to get it ground since they didn't have any extra fine in the black nib to match my Raven. So that was very nice of them. But you can see this doesn't hold all that much ink when dipping. You know, that's why the feed can be so important and why dip nibs have a little bit of a different shape. But it is possible if you don't have a dip nib, you know, you can dip that in and make it work. Now for the one I'm looking forward to using, I've seen Kakimori nibs used all over the place. So as I said, this is my first time using one. And my understanding is the angle comes into play here. So if you write in a tall angle, you're going to get a thinner line. So if we do just a line across, and then if you lay the angle down, you can get a wider line that'll really show that color. And then you should be able to kind of split the difference there, just once again by angle, to get some of that variation. So now in doing this, what I can tell is starting out by writing with the point, it's probably going to take a little bit of getting used to, because you can see I have a lot of splotch right there where I wrote Kakimori. And on a subsequent writing, it works a little bit better. So definitely it'll be a little bit of a learning curve with this. But overall, I really like how that throws down color, and I think that'll be great, especially in this ink swatching book, to have an option to easily try out inks and do, you know, a quick line like this to show color and see how they respond. And as you can see, I've only dipped this nib once, and it holds quite a bit of ink in there. So, you know, this could be used for if you were using for writing, I'm sure. If you wanted to do more of a dip style writing instead of a normal fountain pen, or you have a lot of different papers to swatch on, which that'll come in handy since I have 6 different papers I've been doing in this plotter, as well as coloring and other things like that. So that'll definitely come into use later on. So let's go and do one of the color ring cards here while I have this ink out, and then we'll clean off the nib and switch to the other. And I'm using the glass dip nibs that, if you haven't seen, this is something I learned about from Olive Octopus Ink, and I'll put a link to her website and her Twitch. She's a big proponent of the non-porous swatching tools versus a Q-tip, because they don't absorb. The Q-tip won't, it can absorb ink and doesn't show true color. So I've definitely been a fan of that and following along there. So there we got the ink. Give another little dip just in case. This is Lamy Crystal. Amazonite. Okay, now for cleaning out the nib, my understanding is it's going to be as if you're cleaning off any other swatching tool. You want to get good clean water in there. And since I'm only doing 2 inks, I don't have a separate container of water here, because you just want to be sure that all the ink is out of there. Then give it a, sorry, didn't have that on camera. I'm just wiping off with the paper towel here just to be sure it's clear. And what I'm actually going to do is pop this off of here and swatch the other ink with the other nib holder. Now, one thing I see there, let me hold over here and see if it shows. When pulling the nib out, there was still a little bit of the blue water or ink on there, so I'm going to go and wipe that off as well. That's something I had heard about when cleaning these, is be sure you clean it thoroughly so that you don't cross-contaminate your inks. Okay, that looks good. So once again, to put it in there, you just kind of pop it in, and it's good to go. So let's close this ink up and go over to the Lamy Crystal Ruby ink, and I'm going to get this water out of the way so I can show a little clearer doing the writing on here, just as kind of the test bed, and then we'll do it on the card as well. I definitely, you can tell it's a little bit better this second time around. Now that I had a little bit of experience, be it short, I was able to write the word without getting those initial ink splotches on there. So this will definitely be one that after using it a little bit, it'll become more natural and won't really have the chance of splotchy ink samples, which will be good. And I like how these colors show up on this Airful paper. Airful, if you're not familiar, can show colors a little bit differently. So when I actually do swatches on this for my regular sheets and add them on, it'll be interesting to do a color comparison between that and some of these others after the fact. So let's grab another one of these glass rods here. Going to do this. And this glass rod today does not seem to want to be holding all that much ink on it, so as you can see, I'm having to dip it a few times just to make sure I get a nice even swatch going across. Okay, go on and put that over here in the ink for a second while I get this kind of closed up. So far, what I've seen online, seen other videos, seen other swatching has held true. How the Kakimori works, and I already love having the nib holders, and I actually have a Colorverse shuttle nib on the way as well from Vanessa. So eventually I'll do a side-by-side comparison of the Colorverse shuttle, and I got the brass nib of that, versus the Kakimori stainless nib, just to put those through some of this swatching as I'm building out this full A5 swatch plotter, to see if I end up having a preference of one over the other. I know they're very similar products, but also I'm sure very different in use and consistency. So let me just get this dried off here real quick. And I'll put this swatch book aside and kind of just do a overall final look at these materials and this first impression. Pop that back in there. Okay, so let's set this over here. So as you can see, this has been a bunch of new. I've got 2 new inks. I've got these 2 wonderful nib holders with these cool materials that are very different. And the reason why I got these different sizes is, as we're familiar, different ink bottles have different neck sizes. So being able to fit the different ends in the different bottles Now, that being said, on one of the Pen Addict streams, right when he released these, this slim will not fit into the neck of a Diamine 30 milliliter bottle, which, is a really common size. As you can see here, this is what I'm talking about when I say a Diamine 30 milliliter. The neck size is just small enough that that won't fit in there. So keep that in mind. If you're hoping to have a nib holder for that use case, you might need to find an alternate or use something like an ink miser to be sure it'll fit. So that's going to wrap up this first look, but I am curious, have you used these Kakimori nibs, or do you have other nib holders that you're using and you like? Do you have plain wood ones? Do you have ones made out of cool materials like these from River City Pen Company, who turned these down from the materials from Turnt Pen Co. and from Pens by Pasquale? Leave me a comment and let me know. And also, I once again wanted to say thanks for those of you who've subscribed. I'm around 50-ish subscriptions left from hitting my 1,000 goal that I wanted to hit by the end of the year. So the way things are tracking, I should be able to hit that well before my intended goal, and that would be great because then I can just extend that goal and keep trying to grow that number so I can make more videos. And once again, I appreciate you watching, and until next time, thanks for watching.